What are we gonna do when they shoot a protest?
They already have. Okay, wait. Before you run to the comments to respond on the hook, can you hear me out for just a minute? Okay, full disclosure, this video is for educational purposes only, and it is going to take me a couple minutes to respond to what I just said. March 7th, 1965, in Selma, Alabama, a group of peaceful protesters were met with violent extremism at the hands of the people who were there to protect and serve. In the aftermath of these atrocities, live footage, it was footage that was recorded of the attacks, was televised. And for one of the first times in American history, 50 million Americans were faced with the truth. And that truth, in some small ways, changed the narrative. They had the receipts, undeniable facts. And with that, they no longer had the ammunition that they once had to justify these attacks. Now, in no way does the means justify the ends, but it does serve to teach us in the ways that we can effectively counteract what we're experiencing today and help move our movement forward. Now, if you want to learn more about our history and how we got to where we are today and how to successfully advocate for lasting change, study the civil rights movement. It is incredibly important history and a huge part of what we are fighting for still today. So, my point of bringing up Selma is that footage did in some small part change the narrative. As I said, we are facing an administration that is already calling us rioters before the events happen. We are facing a media that is either attacked for trying to tell the truth, or they are telling a very biased viewpoint and leaving out much of the truth and much of the fact. They are pushing the narrative that we are feral animals starting war in our streets, and you and I both know that's not true. But a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world, they don't know that. They're listening to the mainstream media. They're listening to our administration, who is already they're calling for governors to deploy the National Guard. There are states that are already declaring a state of emergency before the protests have happened and deploying the National Guard. We have officers literally going on television behind a pulpit and threatening all of our unalienable rights if we utilize our civic duty to peacefully protest. Now, unalienable rights are rights that cannot be denied under any circumstances. They are listed in the Declaration of Independence and in some small ways are protected by the Constitution. Now, there's the right to life, which was absolutely threatened. There's the right to liberty, which is the freedom from arbitrary detention, oppression, and the ability to exercise autonomy. And the right to the pursuit of happiness, and the right to abolish or alter the change of a government that infringes upon these rights. That's a pretty strong narrative that we have to counteract, y'all. And one of the best ways that we can do it is documentation. Documentation. We need raw, unadulterated, unfiltered, uncut footage of these events, of the No Kings weekend. We need photographic evidence, we need video evidence, and live streaming. For one of the first times in history, we have the benefit of social media to spread the truth, and we can have just as much reach as the administration and the mainstream media has. We can counteract the blatant lies with the truth. And in doing so, we need to remember that optics matter. Now, I've heard some discourse on social media recently as to what flags to fly. Now, my opinion is, when we're out protesting, if this is the avenue of activism that we're choosing to utilize, if this is the way we're choosing to embrace and embody our civic duties, we need it to represent us, because it's our voice as individuals and our voices as a collective. So it needs to represent you. So if you want to fly the American flag, if you want to fly the Mexican flag, if you want to fly a pride flag, if you want to fly a Palestinian flag, if you want to fly a Canadian flag, fly the flag that best represents the issue and who you are and why you're there. Now, I've also seen a lot of videos asking what kind of signs to make, and I think that's a great question. Signs are important. Signs are our voices when audio is either not available or it's too muffled, or you can't understand it because the video quality is low or whatever. The signs matter, and the signs you make should represent the issues you feel the strongest about and the resolve you would like to see. These are your voices, right? Or part of your voices, the way to use your voice. So if your biggest issue, or the one you identify with most, or most bothered by, is ICE, let's say, you could do, F ICE, or an ice cube with the red circle and line through it. That's the issue. Now, what's your resolve? Abolish ICE. That's what I want to see happen. So on the flip side of the sign, put abolish ICE. If your biggest issue is stealing from the poor to give to the rich, you can have something on the front of your sign that clearly represents the big beautiful bill. I could say big beautiful bullshit, or BBB, or a little picture of a bill, whatever. On the back side, no cuts. You want your representatives to not allow those tax cuts to go through. If your issue is Project 2025 or the Interstate Defined Act, you can do something that would represent one or both of those issues. And on the back, you could say something like reject Puritan values or vote no, right? That's the resolve. I think a lot of us, our biggest issue, there's so many, right? But our biggest issue is we're facing a tyrannical, fascist oligarchy. So if you want to see 47 put in jail, you could put a picture of him, the number's 47, a taco, a orange, whatever, behind jail cell bars. And on the flip side, list one or all of his civil or criminal offenses. If you are against fascism, you can just literally write fascism with a circle and the red line, and on the back, government reform now. Or my personal is, I don't want just government reform. As a the people, of the people, by the people, as a tax-paying citizen that pays these people's salaries, as a voter who chooses them to hold this position and this job, they work for me. And what I want is, I want an immediate resignation from the administration. I want it from the president. I want it from the vice president. I want it from the Health and Human Services person. I want it from the Homeland Security Secretary. I want a resignation. That's what my sign would represent. And I might put a 47, and on the back I'm going to put resign with a little check mark on it. Maybe put a little orange on top. Something along that lines. But your sign should absolutely represent what you're taking issue with and how to resolve it. Message doesn't just have to rely on signs and flags and our chants, which are also very important. It can also be through our clothing. We can wear shirts or hats, preferably not red ones, that say or have a picture of what represents us. What are we speaking to on it? The other things that our clothing can do and the way we present ourselves and express ourselves is, remember, we're fighting against a narrative that are calling us threatening. We could be non-threatening. We can paint our faces. We could wear costumes. Or you could just dress for comfort. Wear what you want. But please, please, please wear comfortable shoes that are appropriate for walking or running long distances if necessary. Now, sticking with that, the whole, we have to fight a narrative. We don't just have to fight for the rights and fight for the Constitution and fight against tyranny. We also have to fight against a false narrative against us. And one of those optics that we can do or utilize is our behavior, right? Now, it's really hard to say that we're creating a war zone when you're being inundated with pictures of people dressed up like Gumby blowing bubbles, right? So there are certain things that we can do. If your event is, say, in a park, sit down. You can do things that are just inherently innocent. Ew, Janice, like blowing bubbles, handing out flowers, singing, dancing, things that are joyful and non-threatening, right? And that's how we portray that this is a peaceful protest. Yes, we can go out and chant peaceful protest, but the imagery that goes along with our words matters, and how it can be interpreted matters. So we need to make sure that imagery is expressing the truth, that we do have love in our hearts, that we're not a threat, that we are simply utilizing our rights and our duties as citizens of the United States to create a United States that everybody has the ability to pursue happiness. So to the point that I made in my hook, yes, it has already happened. In Kent State University on May 4th, 1970. Now, this is during the Nixon administration, and if you want to learn how to further your education on how to successfully advocate for lasting change, definitely look into the Nixon administration. Like today, like with the civil rights movement, the Nixon administration that era was an incredibly politically divided time. And there was a multitude of issues that people were protesting against. One of those being a corrupt government. And on this particular university, protests had been going on for days. And, bars had been closed, curfews enacted, stuff like that, right? Stuff like we're seeing today. I don't know that a curfew was enacted, but I do know bars closed. Anyway, so I believe it was on the fourth or fifth day of protests. The National Guard was there, and it had been an otherwise peaceful protest. And the National Guard used a tactic that is still used today. And it's highly effective, and they're really, really good at it. And where they boxed the protesters in and pushed them back, right? So they come in from one side, they come in from the other side, and they pushed them back. And they pushed the protesters back into like the football field that was fenced in. Okay, well, the protesters, naturally, tensions rose. Nobody likes being confined, and flight or fight responses kicked in, and people threw things. The sounds of that night reverberated through all of American history. 9 people were injured, and 4 people lost their right to life that night. Now, 3 of the 13 people who were most gravely affected were hit in the back. Now, the aggressors, the National Guardsmen in this case, at trial used the defense that they feared for their lives from the reactions that they had instigated. But that wasn't the defense. The defense was they feared for their lives. And that's why they chose to fire. One of the things we can do to avoid being boxed in like that is, when it is possible, instead of congregating in one large crowd of thousands, try to disperse into smaller crowds. And smaller crowds are much harder to control, and it's harder to get us all together. And remember, if you see a line of them coming this way, there's probably a line over here coming this way with the attempts to box you in. Don't let them go this way, right? Always have an exit plan. Be aware of your surroundings. In addition to that, one of the things that is used against us is arrest numbers. Now, the majority of arrests at protests aren't from the singular the instigators, right? The majority of arrests come from disturbing the peace or, unlawful assembly. So pay attention to when your event ends, because your event is most likely has a permit. When that permit ends, you no longer are protected for that peaceful assembly. So they can arrest you for that. They can also arrest you for disturbing the peace after that time. Now, we've seen this last week in LA when the curfew was enacted for 8 o'clock, before 8 o'clock, like 5 minutes till, 3 minutes till, something like that. They boxed people in and didn't allow them to leave, and then proceeded to arrest them for being out after a curfew. Now, those arrest numbers can be portrayed by the media as these were the people that were enacting violence, right? They were looting, they were committing property damage, things like that. The majority of those arrests that we're reporting on are arrests from people being out after they're permitted to be out. So when your event is over, leave. Do so in a calm and orderly fashion, but leave. Other things we want to do to avoid being arrested is, if we're not allowed to be on the street because there's traffic, don't jaywalk, right? Stay on the sidewalks. If we are being pushed, particularly by guardsmen that might be on horses, don't turn around, don't try to push them back, don't grab the horse's reins. They will use that as justification to trample you. Just get out of the way as fast as possible. Get across the street or wherever they're trying to go as fast as possible. But try to do so in a calm and orderly fashion. Now, remember, the people that are supposed to protect the peace and protect us as peaceful protesters are going to be the instigators. Now, I already touched on your ready pack, right? You want your contacts, your emergency contacts on you. If you know a lawyer, you have a lawyer, or you know of one that will do pro bono work, you want that number on you. You want a first aid kit for you or for those around you. Other things you might want to consider bringing are milk and water. Of course, you want to stay hydrated, but also in case you need to wash off or dilute any irritants that might get on you. Masks and eye protection. If you have a gas mask, great. If you don't, safety goggles. If you don't have those, sunglasses, reading glasses, something to protect your eyes. You want something to help alleviate what you might inhale. Gas masks, like I said, are great. Face masks if you don't have those. And if you don't have that, a light scarf or something that you could tie around your face is very helpful. And if you do have any of these items and you have extras, bring them with the intent to gift them to those who don't. These things can be very, very helpful in keeping you and your community and those people that you stand with safe. And please remember that we are a community, and we are a diverse community that is standing together. There's an intersectionality in all of our beliefs and all of our wants that has brought us together, and we need to embrace that diversity and respect that diversity. There's going to be a lot of people who very much want to stand with us at these events that can otherwise not make it for whatever reason, and there's no finite amount of reasons why. Maybe they don't have a ride, maybe they don't have the courage, maybe they're a bluefish swimming in a very red pond, maybe they can't afford a ready pack. There's so many reasons why somebody might not show up. Please, like me, I'm trying so hard to get to an event tomorrow, and right now it looks like I'm not going to be able to make that, and it's kind of events beyond my control. So, just full disclosure, but don't use our absences as a reason to condone us, or not condone, but condemn us, please. Janice. Janice is my pet fly, by the way, in case you're not new here, or in case you are new here. Please don't use our absence as a reason to condemn us, but rather raise your voices a little bit higher to represent us. And remember, there's going to be a lot of diversity within us, right? Some of us are party loyalists. Some of us are activists. Some of us are there for very different issues and reasons. Some of us may take a different role or a different approach to our activism. Some of us may express it in different ways. We should not let these things divide us, because we can absolutely 100% be successful, but we need to stand together in unity. And all of our approaches towards activism is valid and effective as long as we're nonviolent. For being here, listening to me. Remember, you are valid, you are worthy, and you are